Speaking of the spectrum, here we are again. This is Sharuk Sultan, one of your two hosts. So excited to keep bringing this podcast to you. Before I get into things, I want to thank our sponsors, Pulse MD. If you ever need some excellent urgent care and you're in the Hudson region, they have about 7 branches and they opened up one in Florida. Real state-of-the-art stuff. Hopefully you stay healthy. You don't need to see them, but if you do, they're the ones to go to. And thank you guys behind Pulse MD for sponsoring our show.
Thanks, guys.
This podcast is also brought to you by the Autism Society Greater Hudson, of which both Joe and I are privileged to be members of, I feel. We bring a lot of great services to the Upper New York area. We're trying to grow. So head over to our website, asgr.org, and please donate whatever you can. Every little bit helps. And obviously for the podcast, like and subscribe. That'll help us too. Joe, how are things doing today?
Sure. Every day is an adventure, it seems like. But
as an autistic parent, yep.
As an autistic parent and as anybody who has a child on the spectrum and a child that's not on the spectrum knows, it's generally our non-neurospicy child that is causing the problems.
That's very true. My wife and I talk about that a lot because, like, with my older son who's on the spectrum, he's nonverbal, right? We've done a lot of work behind him. I get him ready at school for school in the morning, right? And it's a breeze getting him ready. It's almost a joy. It's like he likes to get his face washed, his hair ready, wears the best clothes, to put on deodorant. He's good to go to school.
He wears deodorant, actually? Can he convince my kid to?
Right. And then my younger one, I can't get him to wash his face 1 time a day. My wife and I have an argument every day. He's just like all over, he's running around, so there's toys everywhere. And you go to my older son's room, it's so like everything's here. I was like, this is like a project manager's dream right here. Like everything's following process. But that's part of the struggle is getting them into that process, right? But you're right, like every day is an adventure and it's always not what you think. One of the things somebody once told me that really stuck with me when I was first coming to this country for college, right? They said, you're a great kid, I know you're going to do great in college, that's not going to be your challenge. It's like stepping out in the real world is going to challenge you in ways that you never planned for, you ever thought of you could do, right? And then one of that was, struggles of obviously like being an immigrant in the country, going through your work visa process, student visa, all of that was one part of it, right? Great, that's done. I'm set. Now you're a parent of an autistic child. Try that on. And that was, I don't want to say it's a negative or bad thing because it's a beautiful journey. It really is.
It's an unexpected journey.
It's an unexpected journey, but it depends. Like I was talking to somebody at work about this the other day where like you talk about, here are things that I got to figure out how to do for this child. Like everything's not that easy to like plan it. What most parents and families take for granted, like going to a restaurant or taking a journey. But once you plan it out and once everything goes smooth, right? Yes, there are low lows, but there's some very high highs to all of that. Oh. And that like really like keeps us going, right? Like I feel like at the moment that clicks in your brain, the whole process just becomes so much easier to manage and so much like less strained with that. You have so much more patience with the child, right? Because that's the whole part of it is like being a patient as a parent and getting through this not for yourself, for your child, but for your whole family and your community, right?
And one of the things that has helped me on the journey of being an autistic parent is the study of stoicism, because you don't eliminate your emotions, but you control the negative ones and you don't let them overwhelm you. So there are very frequent meltdowns or things that are completely unexpected, and we can't overreact as the parent. We need to maintain our cool. We can't let ourselves get flustered with it. And so learning to regulate and harness the emotions, which is some of the traditional Stoic practices, gives us a model for our kids, but also lets us get through those short-term moments of chaos.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I'll be upfront and say that I, by nature, am the type of person who had a short temper growing up, right? Like any teenage kid is, you're out in the new country, you're trying to do something for yourself, emotions, you're just a hot-headed person. And then when you come up with this beautiful journey, you start teaching yourself ways to regulate, like stoicism, like you said, that emotion, right? And one of sort of my inner mantras is like, I picture the storm in my head is coming, like the thunder's about to come, the dark clouds are coming, let that storm clear for a minute, take a deep breath, right? We talk about don't panic now, panic later, act first, right? Like, what are some of the, like, there's I think you told me this, there's something the Air Force uses about this, right? About panicking and how to...
Yes, from Colonel John Boyd, the OODA Loop, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. And so aerial combat's all about getting inside somebody's OODA loop and making them, do something that ultimately gives you the advantage. But if we take a moment, pause, close our eyes, take a deep breath, obviously we're not in aerial combat, so we can do that, but just take the couple of seconds.
Feels like aerial combat sometimes.
Oh, yeah. And, you're in a dogfight with 10 different MiGs sometimes.
Yeah.
But take that moment, pause, look at the situation, observe, okay? Then orient, what's the overall goal here?
Right.
Decide what to do, and then act. And by having those continuous feedback loops so that you can make the micro adjustments, it allows you to be able to navigate those situations. And one of the big things that the military does is the after action debrief. So you look at the game tape, essentially. What happened? Why did this happen? And if we do that with our special kid, we can then learn and next time be better. And that's one of the things about
so
our community.
So it's iterative, right? Like you incrementally built on that.
Yes.
Yep.
So you're continuously learning to make better decisions. But with our community, we have people who have lived these different things beforehand. And that's one of the reasons why I'm glad that Lisa is going to be our guest today, is because she's got a lot of insight that she can share with our listeners about what she has seen and what others in the community are doing, so that we don't have to make all the mistakes ourselves.
That's right.
I'll make my own mistakes.
The best way to learn. Talk to me, Joe, about you have all these great gems, right? Like you talked about OODA, the OODA Loop. And so what facts do you have today for autism to share?
So this is one that was mind-blowing when I came across it. And the stat is that autism is the fastest growing disability disorder among children.
Oh, wow.
In the United States, autism is more common than childhood cancer, childhood diabetes, and AIDS combined. Combined.
That is mind-blowing.
When I came across that stat, I was literally dumbfounded, because it is so prevalent and yet so misunderstood in many ways.
Right, because we keep hearing that we keep talking about 1 in 36, which used to be 1 in 55, which used to be 1 in 100 years ago. Now it's 1 in 36, right? So obviously it's faster growing, right?
Yep.
But when you compare to something like you hear about like AIDS or cancer, diabetes, right? And those kind of causes get so much funding and so much attention, right? And we're here at the Autism Society, we're trying to do the same, right? To like get that visibility into what the struggles are for autism,
right.
Because it's not necessarily a physical disease. Maybe that's why, right? Or
I don't want to call it a disease. It's an invisible disability in a lot of ways.
Disability, right? And if your child is walking straight, most people just look at it and be like, he's fine.
Yeah.
Right? But like, ask the parents.
And an analogy that I use is, when we were kids, well, you didn't grow up in the United States, but when I was a kid, we all brought peanut butter sandwiches to school because you'd have peanut butter and jelly because it was cheap and that's what you did. And then these peanut allergies started popping up. And so even if a single kid in the grade school has a peanut allergy, they were saying no peanut butter for anybody in the school.
Right.
Well, the incidences of autism are much higher than any of those nut allergies.
Yeah.
So why is it not getting the same level of attention and changing the environment around to take care of these people who need just a little bit of empathy and understanding and a little bit of environmental control?
Right, exactly. The flip side of it is the better we make our community, and we've said this before too, right? The more heroes will emerge, I feel, right? And one of the heroes I came across was by the name of Haley Moss. Haley Moss is an attorney, speaker, author, advocate, and consultant. She's an author of several books and numerous articles about neurodiversity in the workplace. She herself is on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to her website, which I just saw the other day, she's met so many celebrities and presidents and stuff. She's out there doing a lot of talks. And, like, here I am saying, like, okay, I have a day job. I'm serving on this board for Autism Society. I'm running a podcast. Look at me go. I'm doing so. And then you come across Haley Moss, who's on the spectrum and who's an attorney. I mean, forget trying to get a law degree. She's an successful attorney, speaker, author. So now she's levels more confident than most people I've come across, right? Advocate and consultant for neurodiversity in the workspace. So, like, they're advocating, like, I feel like neurodiversity in the workspace is such a hot topic. It's going to be coming up more. And she's out there doing it. So, Haley, if you catch attention of our podcast, I'm going to hope that you do. give us a shout out, and I want you to know Joe and I are big fans. So thank you for everything you've done so far, and keep going.
And Haley, we're such big fans. We actually want you to be a guest on here at some point if you are willing to do so. But one of the things that you just talked about is, in the workplace and with the DEI initiatives of the past, 10, 15 years, autism often gets overlooked because, as I said, it's called the invisible disability because people on the spectrum look just like everybody else for the most part. There's nothing that throws the flags that says this person needs special attention to be successful.
Right.
And so they are very often ignored overall.
Yep. At my work, I have the privilege of serving on two committees. One is for I think I mentioned in the previous episode was for families or parents or folks who are on the autism spectrum. But recently, I'm also added to this this other committee that's for DE&I, right? Mm-hmm. And that's mostly because of my cultural background. Right? That's probably why they picked me. They know I talk a lot, and so they brought me in. And they're talking about all these different diversity and blah blah. And I was like, hey, what about diversity of the mind or neurodiversity? They're like, yeah, talk to us more. And then I said, we need to tie up the autism fact of this too, right? Because I know there's coworkers or colleagues out in the workforce who are themselves autistic, who either it's not, again, like you said, it's not a flag, right? But if we give them that space to talk about it, we tell them as a company where there's a community here within here, like a subculture almost you can connect with, you can have a much better experience going to work. Like how are you more likely to work at a company that gives you that kind of space or one that doesn't even has an initiative around it, right? You're most likely to go where you're going to feel more comfortable. Yep. But yeah, exactly what you said is that my thought was exactly the same, that all right, we're doing a diversity, equity, inclusion. What about neurodiversity? And then boom, it's like a mesh right there. And again, we're building that better community. So on the topic of building a better community, our guest here, Lisa, welcome to the show. Lisa, Audi, you run Bring on the Spectrum. So we have Speaking of the Spectrum, now you have Bring on the Spectrum, which is a great name tag. Lisa, how's it going today?
It's going great. Thanks for having me so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first met you, Lisa, I walked into Bring on the Spectrum, which I love the acronym is BOTS, right? And I think you're still setting things up there. And, I walked in there, I was like, I really see this thing blossoming over the years. I think that was maybe 2 years ago. And I think one of the things I saw is that all the different things you're planning to do there, I was like, this is blowing my mind. This is almost like a YMCA for special needs young adults and kids. So talk to me more about, let's get a little bit about the history, right? What brought you into setting BOTS? I know the need as a parent here, right? So for me, walking into something that's already set up and doing so well is amazing. But tell me what led you to do it, because we were really gracious to you having to have done that for the community.
Yeah, sure. Well, I always say my co-founder is my now teenage daughter. There was a sensory gym up in Latham, and it was New Year's Eve 2019. And we were in the sensory gym that afternoon because where else would a single mom of a deaf, hard of hearing, autistic kid be hanging out on New Year's Eve other than the local sensory gym? And we got home that night, and I'm just scrolling Facebook, and the owner announced that she'd be closing the business. And of course, the Facebook post gets flooded with people wanting to do a GoFundMe. And I messaged her and I said, what happened, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a couple of different things. She had moved out of the area, and, had staff that was, running the business. It was a space that was in a probably more expensive piece of real estate because it was a new build in the town. And I'm sure, there was reassessments that were done that were maybe costs that weren't necessarily factored in. But she had created a nice ecosystem, right? Like a nice place for kids to play. And so, I started talking to friends of mine, like this can't go away, right? My daughter at the time was, 9 years old, and that's where she liked to go. And, so we started talking, and, we put an offer, on a space not far from where we currently are, the first week of March 2020. Right. And fortunately,
great timing.
Fortunately, we were thumbs down, totally, rejected was the best rejection I've ever had. because obviously COVID started 2 weeks later, and the rest is history. So we just spent time during COVID really just reaching out to parents and families and schools and agencies, just talking to anybody, right? When we announced the space in November 2021, Maureen O'Brien from NYSID jokingly said in her comments, I don't think there's anybody in the capital region that Lisa hasn't tried to call or email. And I took that as a compliment. Might not have been, but at the core, it was how do we build what we're thinking of? And I always envisioned more than just the sensory gym, right? So I think as a young parent, right, like a lot of people see the cute little kid trying to play challenger baseball, right? And my daughter was going to be leaving elementary school and going to middle school, and let's face it, middle school is hard.
Middle school stinks.
So middle school stinks. Thank you, buddy.
It's official.
So and that's for neurotypical, right? Like if we all just reflect on our own experience, right, in middle school, like it wasn't smooth sailing.
I'm glad there's no social media back then. None of my antics were captured. Or
Well,
embarrassing moments were captured
and it's
back
just
then.
you're just trying to. I call it that period where you're trying to figure your own self out,
Right.
but you're doing it with hormones, with everybody else that's trying to figure themselves out.
With their hormones and
it's just,
pressure.
it's just a really. I have a 20-year-old niece, and she's like, "Oh, it was so much better once you get to high school." And it's so funny because it seems like it's this light switch, right? Like all of a sudden you're on a different bus going to a different building, and you just feel different, right? Like you feel better. So we just always said, okay, well, what is there in our community for tweens and teens, young adults, like the cute 6-year-old kid trying to play challenger baseball grows up. And so we wanted the sensory gym specifically to be a place where folks can age and they can be able to utilize things in the gym. So, the equipment holds up to, 300 pounds. You've got cornhole and Jenga and Connect 4, foosball, air hockey. So all activities that grow with the person and also activities that require somebody else, right? You can do the Connect 4 by yourself and just keep putting the pieces in, but ultimately, you're not really playing foosball or air hockey by yourself.
I remember when I first walked in, you gave me the tour, maybe in a subsequent tour, when I saw the foosball table, like, Lisa, is this for the autistic kids? And you're like, no, this is where I'm going with this. Like, oh, I see now.
Yeah.
Right? I remember the foosball table very clearly because I had the exact thought. I was like, is Lisa trying to do what I think she's trying to do? Which is like amazing.
Yeah. And then from there, as we talk to people, that's really the iteration of the community space, which we thought was the game changer, right? So it's a place where we can hold social and recreational activities. So whether it's Zumba or yoga or art class, ceramics, cooking, those opportunities to take classes in an environment that understands you, right? It's warm and it's welcoming. We understand that everybody's not going to come in on a perfect heel. We keep our class sizes small. And the theory is, we're all making chicken soup until we get someone with a little spice one day, right? And then we're making chili. So how do we keep things as chicken noodle-y as we can? But if it ends up being a little spicy, then, we're prepared for that. And we're respectful of that. And we're accepting of that. And really, it's not meant to just be for the autistic community or anybody with an intellectual or developmental disability. Spectrum is in the name, obviously, because it's a flagpole. And any other intellectual or developmental disability knows, themselves related to that. But it's also for the kids in our schools who, quite honestly, are feeling marginalized, right? Like they don't fit in. Right. It's not just our kids that don't fit in. There's a lot of kids that they don't fit in. Yeah. And so where can you go and feel like you fit in? And, like come to Corkyville, right? Like we're accepting. We don't care what phone you have. We don't care what clothes you wear. You don't have to, have your hair done. You know what I mean? Like we don't care. What we care about is that you come and you have a place where you can do an activity and you can enjoy yourself. And if you come to ceramics, like everybody there likes ceramics, right? And so there's your first point of connection for, connecting with somebody. If you come to Lego clubs, everybody there likes to build. And so you might still be parallel playing at that point, but everybody in the room has that same interest, and you don't have to ask or find out what an interest is.
Right.
So, when we first started, I always, saw the community space also as your opportunity to try things, right? A lot of activities, and I always feel bad because I pick on gymnastics, but, gymnastics asks you to sign up for 10 months. Like, we're not 10-month people. We're barely 10-minute people. We might be 10-class people if we're lucky. So it's a sampler platter, right? Like, we got the football games, coming up, right? And so if the three of us go someplace and we get a sampler platter, I might be looking at the jalapeno poppers like, I ain't eating those because I've never really had them, right? Yeah. But I like spicy. I like buffalo chicken. So like, Joe, you could say to me, hey, Lisa, I think you would like this. I could try one. And if I like it, I can continue. If I don't like it, there's my mozzarella sticks, my chicken tenders. So it gives kids and young adults an opportunity to try new things,
but
without
low risk,
low pressure. You just come for the one time, and if it's good, it's good, and if it's not, then you can try something else.
That's one of the things I learned. Like, I was reading one of the books, I forgot the name, but like about how to sort of connect with someone who's on the spectrum, right? And it's really about getting into their space and helping them, like, being part of them in their space, and then helping them maybe pull it out of it. So the example in the
100%.
book was if I'm at a park, nice quiet park, I'm enjoying a nice spring day, I'm reading a book, right? And I'm on this bench by myself. I'm the individual reading the book. Somebody comes, sits next to me, starts playing loud music. How am I going to feel? Annoyed. I won't want to connect with this person. I'll want them to leave, or I'll feel annoyed. I'm not going to enjoy the book so much. I'm probably going to get up and leave. Now, somebody else came next to me, also sat to me, started reading a book, right? I looked at them, oh, they're reading a book. What book are you reading? And now you have a conversation. Now, this is like sort of the neurotypical parallel I'm kind of drawing here, but like what Lisa was saying is, because you have so many pockets to get in there, you're going to be connecting to that many more ways to connect.
And we're seeing this issue actually among the neuronormal community, among college students, is partially because of COVID and, the shutdowns, and also, the social media and the gaming and all this. It used to be you had to go out and to meet people and socialize. You'd had to go to a bar to meet somebody and, try and build a relationship instead of just downloading an app and swiping. And so the neuronormal 15 to 25-year-old is having those same sort of issues. So basically putting those benches out there where there's books on, people can sit next to you. There's music, and you can, find other people doing the parallel play of Legos, and, oh, that's cool. And all of a sudden you're starting these conversations. That is something that within our community we've focused on for a while in different ways of building those sort of connections. But we're seeing it in the larger society at this point, that there's a need to learn from our lessons on how to build relationships.
But Times Union had an article within the last 2 weeks on new clubs and like people that are either coming to the community, moving here, or like you said, postgraduate college students. I mean, think about the college students that graduated, during COVID, and some of their work is remote. Like, you're not meeting people at the water cooler.
Right.
And so the article was just talking about like the formation of more clubs, a book club or board games or whatever it is, as a way to meet people and connect with people based on your interests. So, man, I was ahead of the curve. I gotta tell.
That's why you're here.
I'm never ahead of the curve.
What I love
I feel like I'm always behind the curve.
But that's like Matthew McConaughey's Oscar speech, right? He's like, I'm always chasing the person 5 years ahead of me. That's my role model, right? And that's what you're doing here, Lisa. But what I love about like the what really drew me was the name, right? Bring on the spectrum, right? It's like taking it head on, right? It was no longer defensive. It was no longer like help the spectrum, right?
It's so funny you say that too, because as a marketing communications person, you would think I came up with the name. I didn't. It was created by one of my board members, Dr. Laura Staff, so brilliant medical physician, and she liked Bring on the Spectrum for the saying, bring it on. Like, bring it on. We're ready for you. And then the bots moniker, honestly, it's so funny because that's what we use so excessively now. But we actually just were using it because we didn't like typing all the words. So like if the group was texting each other, we just was like, oh yeah, I'm going over to bots, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, like I met with Gina Cosgrove and Steve Slazowski from Chelsea Place Associates, and Steve made a phenomenal point. He goes, we call Camp Spectacular Camp Spectacular. We don't call it Camp Autism. Like, who wants to go to Camp Autism?
Nope.
Everybody would want to go to Camp Spectacular, and especially for our tweens and teens and young adults who are, struggling sometimes with self-identifying or, letting other people know or whatever. And that's really kind of the combination of where Bots was born.
And I love
it was us just not wanting to type extra letters, being lazy, and
efficient.
And meeting Steve and Gina and getting that sort of feedback is kind of it's kind of crazy. But I always feel like whether it's not getting the space when we tried to get the space, or how some of these things have kind of evolved organically as we waited to open, as we waited to announce and all that. Like, that was the point of like reassurance that what we were thinking as a collective group, it's not just me, but that's when we knew we were on the right path, right? Like, it's that almost that, you're doing the right thing, you've got the right path, you got the right ideas, because it's very early, very early going. You could take one small defeat and let it just be like, oh, this is a horrible idea, right?
Right.
But, I remember getting our first check, you know what I mean? And I was like, this is real. Like, we're doing this. This is now going to happen. Thank you, Golub Foundation. But, those sorts of like buy-ins and just talking to people, Greg Sorrentino from the Center for Disability Services, and Elizabeth Martin from Living Resources, people willing to talk to me when, quite honestly, like, who the hell is I other than this parent, right? Parent advocate. I have no fancy letters after my last name. I'm not, any like formal anything, but I had a vision with my group, and we were starting to make, like, it made sense, right? Like, it wasn't, like a used car salesman trying to, like, upsell somebody for something that they didn't need.
But that's like, I feel like the universe always provides what it needs, right? Like, if you've latched onto a cause that's needed, organically things would start happening. I feel like, call me religious or whatever, but I feel like there's a larger power at play here
100%.
that starts opening the paths. I felt that way when I joined the Autism Society, right? The reason I came into it was because I ran a 5K once. I high-fived you as a duck, right? At the finish line. Next thing you know, they're reaching out. They're like, hey, you want to join our committee? Now I'm organizing the 5Ks.
Now you're one of us.
Now one of us, one of us. I'm, the vice president. And to me, I had the same feeling, because I'm like, I'm an immigrant, right? I came here as a college student on student visa. And here I'm in the capital region, like, organizing races and helping run this organization, let alone running a podcast now and meeting people like Lisa and you. Like, it's like mind-blowing. But it's like, I had the exact same feeling, which is like, if you latch onto a cause there's a need for, right? And then the organic gates start to open, then you just got to keep following that path. So I'm so glad you're on that. But like, part of Bring On the Spectrum, right? There was challenges, obviously, right? Where's Bots going from here? What's next?
Oh gosh, we could go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
The limit is the universe. We're happy where we're at. Obviously, we've got a very robust calendar of things that we're offering. We've started a ASL class. We just announced the other day Bots Fit. We've got a small workout room that has a bike, a stepper, a tabletop. For those in a wheelchair or those who just don't want to do legs. That would be me. So it's a place to exercise.
So is there like an exercise coach there too? That are like,
well, we have
classes?
We have videos that explain how to use the equipment.
Okay.
And instructions, and then obviously we're there, but it's with it's for only ages 15 and up.
Okay.
So those that are 15 to 17, they would be there with a parent or caregiver, irregardless. And then obviously those that can use it kind of thing. And then also group fitness classes will be every Thursday. So we're really excited about those two recent additions. And, we want to continue what we're doing in relation to the skills. And I think really, one thing that we've done, most recently is we've gotten, people have reached out for neurodiverse individuals to actually lead some of our classes. And so to me, that's walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah.
Because that's employment, and that's giving opportunities. And so we've been real pleased with that because one young man came to us. He attended one of our cooking classes, and then he's said, "Oh, well, I'd like to do this." And I'm like, sure. And so we worked with him. We started like a really small class so that it was manageable. He could get comfortable. And so, those opportunities are out there. Our highlight reels are done by a neurodiverse young person. So
Wow.
again, that opportunity and seeing themselves, creating and actually, getting paid to do something that they have an interest in. So we're definitely looking to step more into that sort of thing. And I think we've all spoken about this in general terms. Is how do we get our individuals employed? The under and unemployment of our individuals is insane, right? Like there's no other way to describe it. But there's a need for jobs, there's a need for employees, and we've got a huge base of individuals. But I think some of that is educating businesses, having them understand a little bit more about job carving. Our folks might not be the one that's going to work 8 hours a day, but you need people. And so whether Joe and I each work 3 hours to cover it, in 8 hours, but I think that's has to really partner with some of the HR folks, and you spend maybe a little extra time onboarding our folks, but they're going to stick with you.
Yeah.
And this job churn that you're seeing in certain areas won't be the same as with our folks, but you've got to be what we've been talking about. You have to be a little bit more open-minded, and we seem to have evolved to be more cognizant of, the family pull that individuals are going through, whether you're a single parent, 2-income family, like we're taking into account all these factors. But like you were speaking of, like we as a business community shouldn't be just being able to onboard, white males, right? We've got to be able to address the issues that face, women, the Black and brown BIPOC community. We need to be able to onboard everybody and have a space for everybody, and also our transgendered, binary, everybody.
That's
So,
why it's a spectrum. It covers every color, every orientation.
All means all.
All means all. Thank you.
And all you have to do is just just be ready for whoever's applying for your positions, and if if you have a need for employees, then you should be ready for that. You should be ready for whoever comes in your door, and be ready to, be warm and welcoming, and coming up with solutions. Because right now, there's more openings than there are necessarily some folks to fill them. And so I think that's where, the business community will be evolving. And hopefully that benefits our population specifically.
Yeah, and I feel like, Lisa, what you're doing with bots is like, you're setting a foundation, you're kind of laying all the seeds, and this is going to go to so many more, like, it's going to branch out in so many ways. So, I mean, congrats on all the work you've done and where everything is going. I think my last question to you is, how can someone get a hand to those awesome branded hoodies and t-shirts? You always, every time I see you, it's a new color, it's a new style. There's got to be an online store somewhere I can get one or custom design one, because I would totally rock one.
It's funny. We sometimes do launch little stores, and I end up buying something every time. I also have a mom. Shout out to Lauren, who likes to cricket me some gear. Mm-hmm. So for Halloween, I got a bot shirt. Instead of a heart, it was a white ghost. And then for the winter time,
awesome.
She made me, instead of the heart, I have a snowflake. So I look like Anna and Elsa when I wear that one, because it's like the teal and the purple from Frozen.
Right.
Maybe I should start wearing a bot shirt for our podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Totally have to get on someone. Yeah.
All right, I'll find something in the closet for you guys.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lisa. We covered a lot today, Joe. So any other sort of what's your main? Like, I know what I'm taking away with this. I feel like it's all means all, right? Like that's we're headed in the future. Like that bots is laying that foundation from a neurodiversity perspective, and that's where it's going to lead us to build a better world, right? That's what I'm taking away out of today. What's in your head?
Really, what you said about the benches, because what Lisa's building is a place with lots of benches, lots of tables where people can sit down and find a mutual interest, where they can start exploring and pushing their limits a little bit and find others that glom onto that too. Yep. And so it gives each the opportunity to grow in their own way. And that then gives them the opportunities once they leave the doors, once they are, 18, 21, they're grown up, they're more functional in society because they were able to take it at their path and their speed to eventually find their way.
Right. And do you think that with the onset of AI, a lot of that's going to start happening? Because I feel like a lot of businesses might feel that, how do I support so much? Right? Like to add another incremental thing is just more money, but like AI might enable a lot of it, right? Like, do you feel that's going to help us go to this next era of whatever humanity or technology is going to look like?
And, one of the things of people on the spectrum very often having not the greatest social recognition and interaction, by utilization of computers, we're almost replicating the mindset of our special kids in some ways. And so as AI becomes more accepted in society, that's going to allow our kids, our people, our community to be a little bit more accepted because it's just a new normal.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's a beautiful thought to wrap things up. Lisa, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Every time I meet you, I feel like I take away something. So, all good.
Did you want to say hi?
Hi, Clarabelle.
You want to say hi, Clarabelle? All right.
All right. Well, we got that.
We got a wave.
You got a wave on a podcast.
That's amazing. That's amazing. This has been Speaking of the Spectrum. Speak soon. Like and subscribe.